Years ago, I heard a very basic phrase that describes how some people might approach relationships, and it's their way of saying, let's keep things simple. The phrase goes like this: love me, love my dog. That's it. And basically, whoever came up with that for the first time was more or less saying, you know, when you get to know me, there's just certain simple things about me that's going to come along with me. Who I am and who I hang out with and what my preferences are. Love me, love my dog. And we can actually include psychological things. You know, I have these preferences or these needs or these emotions. When you get to know me, you're going to get to know me on a very basic level. That's what I do. By the way, I have one guy that really likes that phrase. He's back there asleep. That's Gus's favorite phrase. Love me, love my dog. When you are engaging with narcissists, they don't take that kind of approach. It's not like they say, yeah, you know, basically we all have needs and we all have our idiosyncrasies and quirks and our preferences and all of that. And so I want you to know me thoroughly and I want to know you thoroughly. They don't think like that. They have a very tightly constructed false self that they live behind. It's like they live with this shield, and you will not penetrate that shield. It's like, no, I've got an image that I have to maintain. And if there's anything that kind of gets in the way of me maintaining that image, then you're just not going to get to know about it because I've got to push that off to the side. Now, because of that, there are key phrases that you will never hear these individuals say because they're so committed to keeping up that false image. They can't go to that very basic style of relating that you and I would want them to go with us on. So I want to run through 6 primary phrases that you would not hear from a narcissist that if you could, it would actually improve the relationship. And then as we wrap it up, I'm going to want to talk with you about some much cleaner alternatives. So let's go through these. The first key phrase that you might not hear from a narcissist, and by the way, there are plenty more that we could add to this, just so you know that. First key phrase is, I'm struggling. I blew it and I could sure use some help. Narcissists can't do that. If they show themselves to be hurting and struggling, even when it's glaringly obvious to everyone else, in their minds, it's like, oh no, that puts me in way too much of a vulnerable position. And narcissists do not like to be vulnerable. One of the basics of simple, healthy relating is for us to be vulnerable with each other. I see what's going on in you. You see what's going on in me. Let's acknowledge that. Let's be open and let's talk about our highs and our lows, our pluses and our minuses. And so if you blew it, own it. Say it. Let's talk about it. The narcissist is like, no. I don't do it that way at all. Now, this leads to a strong adjunct to that, the number 2, a phrase you won't hear narcissists say, and that is, I realize that I have some ongoing patterns that are feeding into our current difficulties. You know, if there are some difficulties that just keep popping up, you know, you argue too much, or there's some money mismanagement, or there's a stubbornness or defensiveness that comes very quickly and easily into the relationship, typically you're going to see that this is something that's been going on for a long time. Healthy people who are trying to take a simple approach to that will say, I know that I brought into my adult years certain trends and tendencies and patterns, and for the rest of my adult life, I'm going to be working on keeping those to a minimum. And so when we see it, I'm not just going to focus on the problem right there in front of me in the moment, but I'm going to focus on that in the context of the big picture. Narcissists, they don't do big picture. It's like, look, if you're talking about historical trends and patterns, you're just living in the past, and that's a waste of time. Besides, I don't know that it's a pattern with me anyway. I'm not going to do something like that. And so they tend to give brush-off statements. So what if I have a temper? Or so what if I'm stubborn? You are too. And yeah, my old man was that way, or I've worked with other folks who are that way, and they do it too. So what? And they just don't want to acknowledge that we all have our strains and tendencies that can take us towards some dysfunction. You know, healthy people will own it and they'll want to do something about it. Narcissists, you won't hear them take ownership of that at all. A third phrase that you'll not hear a narcissist use, and that is, I know you're feeling uncomfortable right now. Let's talk about that. Now, in relationships, how many times do we engage with one another only to have certain emotions or interpretations come along that create disappointment or annoyance or surprise or intrigue or anger. Healthy individuals pick up on that kind of stuff with each other, and we say, hey, look, I noticed something's going on. Let's talk about it. And the topic can be a very one of many broad topics that we could pick out on. It implies empathy. It implies that that we need to learn how to see behind the scenes in someone else's life and go there. Narcissist is like, look, if you're feeling uncomfortable, knock it off. You're making me uncomfortable. You're getting in my way. And so they just, they see that as being a nuisance. You're a nuisance. Quit bothering me. Let's move on to something that's much more simple and conducive to what I want in the moment. Or a fourth phrase you will not hear from a narcissist, and check me on this one, and that is, would you forgive me? You ever hear that from a narcissist? And then they'll actually name what they need to be forgiven for. Narcissists think competitively, and they like being at the top of the stack. And so if they have to admit that they've done something that warrants forgiveness, that means they've taken themselves, in their mind, off the top of the stack. And they've just become a regular person. It's like, I don't do that. I have to maintain my superior position. I have to be in control. Forgiveness or acknowledging forgiveness or the need for it implies that vulnerability there. And I am not about to go to that. And they feel like they're losing ground, when in fact, actually they gain credibility, but they can't think like that. They just see that as taking a step backwards. A fifth character or phrase that you will not hear from a narcissist, and that is, I know that I have needs, but right now, let's focus on your needs. How can I help you? Wouldn't that be nice? Now, sometimes a narcissist might do something that seems to be like they're doing you a favor, they're helping you out, but I can assure you it's a transaction and you're eventually going to owe them something down the road. Healthy individuals, it's like, there's a huge give and take in relationships, and sometimes your needs come to the forefront, sometimes my needs come to the forefront, and we're just going to have a sense of camaraderie and equality and fair play with one another. So I want to be tuned into you, just as I hope you're going to be tuned into me. A narcissist is thinking, if that implies equality, I'm not going to do that. And so when you talk about your needs, they're thinking, oh, now what? And so it's a bother to them, and they don't want to be bothered. Or a sixth phrase you will not hear from a narcissist, and that is, let's compromise. I'm willing to move into your direction if that's something that can show goodwill. See, compromise to a narcissist implies weakness. It implies that they're giving their strength over to someone else. And it's like, oh no, if there's going to be some compromise, and we do need to have compromise around here, you need to compromise with me. That's how they think. If it's going to happen, it's not going to be from me to you at all, because they have to be on the high end. They're not peacemakers. They can be bullies. So here we have these kinds of phrases, and like I say, we could add many more to it. I go back to that simple philosophy that Gus here likes. Love me, love my dog. Let's just take each other for what we are, and let's build upon the basics. They don't want to do that, but let's see if you and I can figure out what are some of the more effective alternatives that we can have that would be different from these statements that I just mentioned that are so common to the narcissist. For example, I want to be known as somebody who prioritizes harmony. These comments that I just made just a minute ago don't imply a need for harmony at all. I want to be known as someone who prioritizes openness. I want to prioritize connection. I like prioritizing affirmation toward you. I like to prioritize accountability. I recognize the good that comes from that. I want to prioritize contrition. I need to show that I see things in me that need to be different. I want to prioritize psychological curiosity. Who are you? Who am I? And how does that impact us? I want to prioritize basic understanding. I want to prioritize vulnerability. Especially I want to prioritize authenticity. I want to prioritize goodness. You see, those are the characteristics that we can have as we engage with one another, and it keeps things simple. That way we don't have to worry about maintaining secrets or having dominance and competitiveness. We're going to keep things basic. Unfortunately, the narcissist cannot do that, but I'm hoping that's something that you will give priority to, and you can speak those phrases that I just mentioned that they cannot. Now, let's remember one thing that I like to remind you of. Dr. C, DRC, stands for dignity, respect, civility. I wonder if you'd join me in making sure that those kinds of ingredients are central to the way that we do life together. I do hope that you are stimulated by words such as these and these videos. If you've not done so, I would invite you to go beneath the video here and subscribe to our channel. Also beneath the video, you're going to see that you can sign up for our email list, where we have actually bonus videos, some short ones with some articles that go along with it, and then also some promotions that we would have. You may be in a place where you could use some online counseling. I know many of you have reached out and wondering, how can I get some help beyond just this? And we have a link that would help you in that way. I have online workshops, books, and we even have coffee mugs. How about that? And so I hope that you would go beneath here and find some things that might be helpful for you. Now, let's reiterate that we're on this journey together, and as you join me in your journey, I wish you peace and goodwill. I'll see you next time.